So I'm Gulzar Shah, and I'm professor of public health at Jiann-Ping College of Public Health. Today, I'm meeting with my student, Miss Christy Waterfield, to basically answer some basic questions about publishing by students. The reason we are doing this video is because we get a lot of other students who have not published yet, but they want to publish, and they always wonder where to start. So I guess this would be the purpose of today's video. We'll try to answer questions that a typical student will ask about where to start their research.
I would like to write a manuscript for publication. Are you available to assist me?
For sure. I think a lot of students might have similar needs, so I'd be happy to answer your questions.
So where do I start?
Well, you start with the topic and selection of a topic. And do you know how to select a topic?
No. Can you help me with that, please?
Well, generally, the topics come from people's own interests in certain things, or they can come from other sources. So the other sources, the best source for a topic is to determine where the knowledge gaps are. So the knowledge gaps can be determined based on existing literature. So we have to understand one thing. The knowledge is accumulative in nature. That means that we don't reinvent knowledge. We ought to first determine what is the state of knowledge in your field or in the topic area, and then try to add to it. It's much like a jigsaw puzzle. You know, the puzzle is there, and when the picture starts to appear, you got to determine where the gaps are. So in research, determining gaps involves doing literature review. So you review the existing literature, and then that's how you determine where the gaps are. And sometimes for students, it's hard to, you determine where to start looking. So that's where a mentor comes in. A mentor is almost essential ingredient in your research. And a lot of times students are reluctant to reach out to a mentor. You should know that, as students are eager those students who are eager to do research, there are mentors, faculty members at all colleges, particularly at our college, Jiann-Ping College of Public Health. They're eager to involve students, because having students working with faculty means free labor. And for students, the mentors who have already determined in their field of research where are the gaps, they can quickly point to those gaps. So that's where we start, where we determine where the gaps are. Then we start thinking about how to fill those gaps.
Where do topics come from, and how do we determine which topics to select?
So as I said, a lot of times research topics can come from your own interest. Like, let's say you are interested in knowing why are some people happy and others are sad. And you might guess based on what our folk wisdom tells us, or you might go to the scientific literature and try to determine what are the reasons. And as you do that, you will come across questions or areas of that topic where there are no answers. So that's where the topics come from. The gaps, as I said, in knowledge, that's where the topics come from. And again, we cannot undermine the importance of having a mentor. A mentor can point you to the topic area. And one thing to remember is, a research for the sake of research is not good research. It has to be meaningful to do something. So in other words, if we are talking about public health research, it should be useful to either people who are in the public health practice or people who are doing policy, and in many other aspects of there are many other users. So from those users' point of view, it should be useful. And if it's not useful, it's not a good topic.
How do I move from purpose to actually writing the research question and the hypothesis? And do I need more than one research question?
That's a good question. So a lot of students kind of struggle after they select a topic and they write the purpose of their study, then they don't know where to go next. So it's difficult to move from a very broad general topic area to specific questions and even more specific hypotheses. So the way to go about it, once you have selected a topic, you think about what's generally referred to as problem statement. So you would define your problem or determine or describe your problem statement based on your topic, the existing state of knowledge in the field, and then you say, well, these are the pieces, missing pieces. Remember we talked about missing pieces of puzzle. You say, in order to find these missing pieces of puzzle, what questions should be answered? So you go from the purpose, broader purpose, to narrower questions. And I guess later on we can talk about what are good questions. But for now, the answer would be to think of going from very broad topic to specific questions and even more specific hypotheses, which I'll explain. So let's use an example to explain. Let's say my broader topic is the effectiveness of local boards of health, right? And so that's fairly broad. Effectiveness is a very abstract construct. So in order to think about more specific questions, let's say you reviewed the literature and you found out that the governance of local board of health is one aspect by which we could basically determine the effectiveness. So let's say you read our paper, Shah et al. Taxonomy of Local Boards of Health, published in American Journal of Public Health, and you say, okay, there are 6 governance functions, and there are, let's say, there's a taxonomy that we created. So you say, I'm going to use that taxonomy to measure the effectiveness. So you say, okay, so now you are more specific. You say the effectiveness as measured on taxonomy of local boards of health, and then you say in terms of what are the outcomes. So you say, maybe you select one of the areas of performance of local health department and say that is their financial performance. So now the research question is beginning to form. Are local health department who have better or more effective local boards of health more likely to have protective effect on their budgets, for instance? So in other words, are health departments with a better local board or more effective local board of health more likely to keep the budget or improve or increase the budget over time? So that would be a good research question.
So what are the characteristics of a good research question?
Well, at a very beginning, a research question should not be answerable in yes/no form. And it should not be trivial, like something that should require some data gatherings, because, answering research questions should not be based on our own opinion or our knowledge of existing things. It should be, remember, we are trying to add to the existing knowledge. So that means the question should require us to collect more evidence. And when I say evidence, I mean more data. And so that's another feature. So it shouldn't be trivial. It should require gathering evidence. So now when we talk about evidence, another good feature is that the evidence should be collectible. Like if we ask a question for which the data cannot simply be collected, because say we are trying to ask about the nature of the whole world, and we are, as a student, do we have resources to collect the information? So a good question is the one which is testable. So it's testable, it's answerable, and those answers should come from data, and those data it should be feasible to collect those data. Another feature of a good question is that it's not too broad or it's not too narrow. And let me tell you why. So a too broad of a question would not be testable. I mean, if it's not specific to space, like we don't mention what geographic area are we talking about, what group of people we're talking about, and if it's not specific to time, if it's not specific to certain characteristics of our subjects, then it would not be testable. On the other hand, if it's too specific, so if the question is specific to, for example, a class of students, what are they wearing? For example, what color is a popular color? If it's not a scientifically representative sample, then that's too specific. It's not generalizable. So it should be specific enough so that it's measurable, and it should be broad enough so that it can be generalized to other subgroups and other population, other space and other time, if possible. And if it's not generalizable, if it doesn't apply, the findings don't apply to other situations, events, and so forth, then we cannot say that we have done much to add to the existing state of knowledge in research. So those are some of the features of a good research question.